Darkness, violence. We enjoy these things in our entertainment. From the silent era to Hitchcockian thrillers, to Scorsese and Tarantino's gangster films, and clear through to the modern era, violent and dark scenes have captivated audiences as long as the medium has existed. Is it part of the human experience to crave violence and seek out extreme content? Does it harken back to our turbulent tribal roots or the gladiatorial combat of the Roman Empire? Or is there a mysterious force calling out through the endless void of space and time, demanding violence, that we crush our enemies, drink blood from their skulls, and dominate the world?
Conan, what is best in life? To crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentation of their women.
Or is it simply that witnessing something extreme and violent from the safety of our living room can enhance our enjoyment of a TV show? Perhaps, but whatever the reason, dark and intensely violent scenes are integral to many dramas. Today, I want to talk about 3 scenes in particular from 3 different shows that left an indelible impression on myself and the viewing audience. Scenes like this can elevate a show to intensity levels not yet experienced. They can also traumatize you, like this scene from the Netflix show Maniac.
I have a daughter. She got special needs. She's special needs.
I'll never unsee that. And while that scene would be well at home in this video, it is not one I want to talk about today. Today's first scene comes from the controversial, beloved, hated HBO show. I will never forget watching Game of Thrones Season 4, and the entire season is leading towards Tyrion Lannister's trial by combat. An absolute fan favorite. Tyrion's life was hanging in the balance because he was wrongly accused of the murder of King Joffrey. What's the opposite of a fan favorite? And instead of letting his fate be decided by what would surely be a rigged trial, he left it up to the gods. However, Tyrion's a dwarf and a diplomat, certainly not a warrior. And even if he was, he had to go up against the Mountain, the largest, most vicious, bloodthirsty guy in the whole realm. To put it lightly, he was totally screwed. That is until a hero arose, a savior. The Red Viper of Dorne, Oberyn Martell himself, agreed to fight in his stead. This would satisfy Tyrion's very obvious desire to be let free and the Viper's desire to get revenge on the Mountain for the atrocities he committed against his family. And while this arrangement is certainly an improvement on Tyrion's circumstances, we're talking about the Mountain here. I don't know how many people really gave the Viper a chance. But regardless of what people thought, the Viper was fighting, and that day was approaching. And then the day arrived. It didn't look great at first, but the Viper eventually caught his rhythm, and to the surprise of everyone, he won the fight. Until he didn't.
Say it!
But still, I had hope that he could get out of this and somehow save Tyrion's life. That is until
Oberyn Martell. I killed her children. Then I raped her. Then I smashed her head in like this.
Yeah, once the Mountain got his hands into his eye sockets and just crushed his skull, that was all she wrote. And to say something of Pedro Pascal's performance, I mean, he's everywhere. He couldn't be more oversaturated, but in that scene, in that role, he was amazing. And the screams that he let out are so blood chilling. They sound exactly what a person would make if their eyes were getting crushed inside their skull. It was so helpless and desperate. And the turn of emotions in that scene, you go from the Mountain inexplicably winning, which was like, yeah, Tyrion's free, to, oh my God, that is not going to happen, and the Viper's head is crushed. That scene fucked me up. I watched it live with a buddy in 2014, and we must have rewatched it like 5 or 6 times. No exaggeration. And it has stuck with me ever since. Over a decade ago, I could still remember that. However, sometimes scenes don't have to be violent to be absolutely devastating. The next scene also comes from an acclaimed HBO drama, and in fact, this one was actually filmed where I grew up. I was even an extra in the last episode. I'm talking about HBO's In season 5 of The Sopranos, Adriana is secretly working with the FBI, obviously against her wishes, and she's about to go down for accessory to a murder she helped cover up, and she's looking at 20 years. So instead of doing that time, she tries to enlist Christopher with her to turn state's evidence. Chrissy didn't take the news very well.
I had no choice. They've been filming us in the parking lot. Oh, no.
But after he calms down, Christopher reconsiders, and it really looks like he's going to do it. He's obviously torn and terrified for their lives, but I think he realizes it's the right thing to do. So he goes out to get some air and get some cigarettes, and while he's doing that, he sees this poor family, and there's like this father and mother and 2 kids, and they look poor and miserable. And you can just see Christopher while he's fueling up his H2 that is not the life for him. Now, back at the apartment with Chrissy gone, Adriana gets a call from Tony claiming that Christopher tried to kill himself. Now, Adriana knowing what they're planning is incredibly dangerous, and the people that they know are incredibly dangerous, and this call comes out of nowhere. She obviously puts 2 and 2 together, grabs her stuff, and just runs.
If you ever wanna get away from California, maybe in another life you like to stay, and the devil may call you when he thinks it's time.
Except she doesn't. They cut to her eyes, revealing she's actually in the car with Syl, and that scene of her driving away into the sunset was just what she was imagining as she's now driving to her death. She could have just run and been free of all of this, but she stayed. She believed Tony. She believed Christopher would never sell her out, and now she's gonna die, and she knows it. That was an absolutely brutal misdirect from David Chase. Oh my God. That was mean. I think when I first watched this, I already knew that she had died. Like, I'd heard about that. But then I saw the scene and I'm like, oh no, she lives. And then you're like, oh no, she dies. For one fleeting moment, we thought she got wise to Tony and just ran. She got sold out by Christopher because he could not imagine living a struggling pauper's life. So he gave away the woman he loved to avoid that fate. God damn. This is still one of the most talked about moments in The Sopranos, and that's a show that has a lot of scenes you can talk about. And as awful as a scene like this is, you never forget it. It leaves a permanent impression on you. And that brings me to my last scene. As scarring and as memorable as those scenes are, this one is different. This scene doesn't result in the death of a fan favorite character or the shattered reality of someone we've learned to know and empathize with. It comes out of nowhere. This f***ed up scene comes from my favorite science fiction drama. In season 3 of The Expanse, the powder keg that is the system-wide Cold War has been hanging over every moment of this show. It's driven the drama since the first episode, and the first significant battle of that war is over the farming moon of Ganymede. Now, depending on who you ask, Earth or Mars started shooting at each other, and that battle sent these giant agricultural mirrors crashing to the moon's surface. The result was utterly devastating for the residents below. The infrastructure of the settlement was thrown into total chaos. Many buildings were destroyed, including the ag domes, which provided crops for most of the belt. Hundreds of people were killed, injured, or displaced, and in the middle of all this madness was a botanist named Prax. So Prax was on Ganymede when the fighting started, and when the Falota hit the fan, he was severely injured and knocked unconscious. Because of this, he was escorted onto a refugee ship completely against his will, and when he woke up there, he couldn't find his daughter. She's back on Ganymede, presumably either missing or maybe even dead. Now, on this refugee ship, things are pretty desperate. People are injured, suffering from the destruction, fighting amongst themselves. Prax is alone and completely gutted by the loss of his daughter. Among the refugees, Prax does run into a friend of his, a Martian scientist that he knew from Ganymede. She does her best to comfort him and offers him a ride back on Mars where he can at least heal up and maybe in the future contribute to their terraforming project. And as absolutely devastated as Prax is, he doesn't really have a choice. They're not going back to Ganymede. At least on Mars, he can get healthy and maybe get a rescue party for his daughter, something. But he's got to go with her. Eventually, this refugee ship links up with another ship that's going to bring back all the inners. That's people from Earth and Mars. So they're going to dock with this ship and drop off all the refugees that are going to those planets. As they're going to the airlock, at the very last minute, a crewman stops Prax and won't let him on. Inners only, he says. Prax protests, but once again, what can he really do? They say inners only, he's got to stay on. But being a good guy, Prax wishes her the best of luck, and after the door closes, he stays with her, looks through the glass, keeping her comfort until they can dock with the next ship. And then it happens. An entire spaceship full of people, refugees from a war zone, were just blasted into hard vacuum like they were dumping trash. And they did it for no other reason than they were inners. And it's the inners war, so f them. That doctor might have been the only person in the entire solar system that Prax even knew. And now she's gone. The absolute viciousness of that scene. And I think it's a pretty good parallel to real life war atrocities and just how brutal and impersonal they are. They hadn't done anything wrong except just be on the wrong side of the conflict. They were just leaving a war zone, trying to get home to their families. But these Belters have over a century of resentment for anyone who comes from Earth and Mars, and it just manifests with reptilian coldness and blasts poor innocent people into the icy cold vacuum of space. That scene hit me so hard because you're just like, what just happened? Like there was no lead up to this. At least with the other two scenes, you're anticipating the intensity or the violence. This one comes out of absolutely nowhere. And perhaps it's cheap and manipulative and preys on our primal instincts, but scenes like these are the things you remember from shows like this for years. Ask any Game of Thrones fan about the fight with the Viper in the mountain, or any Sopranos fan about the Adriana scene. Like I was talking to my mom about this very video and mentioned the Game of Thrones scene. She was like, oh my God. Like she had like a flashback to it. They're intense. They last. And for better or worse, they really do heighten these shows to different levels. They're vicious and you feel compassion and empathy for the people in them, but they make the shows better. Whatever value judgment you want to put on that, we appreciate it as an audience. Or maybe it's just me and I'm really messed up. I don't really know, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video of me taking you down through these very dark scenes. And stay tuned for more content. Ta-ta!